So this is the 6-step unstoppable guide on how you can continuously drive hundreds of sales to your B2B business every month. Who is this for? It's ideal for mid-sized corporations, anyone who is in the sales department, marketing department, or even the owners of the businesses that are looking to, how do I now get my business to the next level? How do I drive consistency and make sure my team can generate hundreds of sales each and every month? Now, if you're looking for how you can continuously drive this, this is the right video for you. And why should you be paying attention to me? Over the past 10 years, I have focused exclusively on scaling sales teams and scaling sales. And what I have learned is this one thing: what it requires for you to make 20 sales a month and what it requires for you to make 300, 500 sales a month are absolutely different things. Now, in this video, I'm going to focus exclusively on what does it take for you to generate the hundreds of sales, and what do you need to do? How do you need to adjust your team? And through these 6 steps, even you too could be able to set your team up to drive consistency at the end of the day. And if this is what you're looking for, please continue right ahead. So now let's dive right into the 6 steps. Step number one: first, understand who your ideal customer profile is. It looks like an underrated topic, but if you went out to many business owners right now, especially people who are selling to other businesses, and ask them, so give me a definition, who do you regularly sell to? Many of them are going to say, you know what, my product can be taken up by anyone. Yes, it could be taken up by anyone, but it's not wise for you to start by attacking everyone, because you do not have the capital and the resources that's going to keep track and market to everyone. So it's important that as you're starting out, step number one is first choose. Yes, I intend this product to be for everyone, but where should I begin from? What is a good starting point? I mean, am I selling to small corporations? Am I selling to mid-sized corporations? Am I selling to large corporations? Um, After you have identified, step number two is within these categories, who within the organization do I sell to? There are going to be scenarios where you, in your head, you imagine that because the CEO is the decision maker, it's who you're supposed to be selling to. Whereas the person that might be using your product could be the sales manager, the marketing manager. Why not start with the person who's going to be using your product and get to understand that, yes, first of all, targeting mid-sized companies. Within these mid-sized companies, maybe mid-sized in our point of view is between 10 and 50 employees. But within those companies, the guy we actually reach out to is probably the sales manager or the marketing manager or whoever is responsible, whoever is going to be using your infrastructure on the day-to-day. After you have sold to him, you need to understand that it's still an organization. So after he has been sold to, what does that tree of decision making look like? Does it need to involve accounts? Does it need to involve the MD? So how do you now create relevant content and enough pressure for him to be able to create the meetings that you need? So get to understand it and literally document it and say, you know what? Yes, we intend to sell to everyone maybe in the near future, but as a starting point, we've started with this industry. This industry, the companies are going to target are going to be this size, and within that size, we're going to be selling to exactly this given individual within the organization. And from that individual, he's going to put us in touch with the other possible decision makers, which will help us complete the entire cycle. So make sure it's predefined, make sure you have articulated it, and most importantly, you could even document it so that when your team keeps expanding, they get comfortable and they know that, okay, here is who we are selling to as a starting point. So that's step number one: identify your ideal customer profile. Now, step number two is do the mathematics. I know some people are going to say, because I've mentioned the word math, immediately their brains are going to turn off. But as a management team, whether you're the CEO, whether you're the sales manager, it's important that you understand the maths. The maths include things like, how many leads do we need to acquire? What does our pipeline coverage look like? How many meetings are ideal for us? Get to understand that to the dot. On a day-to-day, how many people do we need to be talking to? Just to help you understand this, let me use an example. So for example, you wanted to generate 100 customers. The first thing you need to understand is, in order to sell to 100 customers, you're not only going to talk to 100 people, you're going to need to talk to about 1,000 leads. 1,000 leads means 1K divided by 20, those are about 50 people a day. Now, if you have two sales reps, It means those are about 25 people per sales rep a day. So by breaking it down, you begin to understand, okay, now is 25 a realistic number? Can we do a bit more? Should we do a bit less? So of these 25, how many meetings should we anticipate? Why it's important to do this math is you're beginning to put expectations and targets in people's heads. And the way the human mind works is the better you can help it reduce the decision making it has to make, the better for you. If you just tell someone that, you know what, all I have expect of you is I just want you to get to 25, 30 people, his mind is going to find a way of adjusting towards how do I get to 30. Whereas if you just tell him, yeah, give us the best, what does the best mean? It's too ambiguous that by not directing your sales team and your sales reps on what they need to do, it's going to cause a lot of lack of focus because they don't know what success means. Understanding the math gives you a definition of what does success mean when it comes to our sales process. And in so doing, it opens up your team towards what do we now need to do in order to make sure that we can attain this success. So yes, get to understand the math. Just as a recap, understand things like how many sales do we want to make? That's the first question. In order to get those number of sales, how many leads do we need to acquire? Of those leads, what does our pipeline coverage look like? Get to understand what is our average sales cycle. So literally not. It could be just a couple of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions, but make them obvious to the people and break it down for them on a day to day. You have 20 days in a month. What do you need to do on a day to day? But in so doing, you're going to ease their work a whole lot more than leaving it ambiguous for them to try and determine what success means to them. And yes, that's step number 2, identify, learn the math. Now, step number 3 is about execution. Execution entails two things. Number one, what do we need to be doing on a day to day in order for us to attain the goals that we need to attain? So this will leave you two things that you need to do. There are going to be some things that involve what they call outbound, meaning your sales team is reaching out to people to buy from you. Then there are going to be things in activities that you need to do that drive inbound. Inbound is people who are coming to you. Things like creating content, things like creating newsletters, those bring people to you. So in this segment of this training, I'm going to help you understand a bit of both. Don't forget that if you would like us to customize something for you, just literally reach out to me through the comment section and we'll help you customize what makes sense to your business because this varies from business to business. Now, let me start with inbound. Inbound simply involves what do we need to do in order for people to come to us. The first step, like I always say, is identify how much of the activity that you need to do in order to get the target that you want. For this given case, we're looking for 100 customers, meaning we need 1,000 leads coming in. So step number 1 would say, okay, now what are we going to do in order to attract the 1,000 leads? There are different platforms that you could use in order to attract these leads. The most popular one I like that works for us is what they call the webinars. So we hold weekly webinars. Every other week we hold a webinar. And each of these webinars, before the person comes to attend the webinar, or they usually have to fill in some kind of form. They give us their name, their email, the company they work for, the phone number, and whatever other details that you would want to ask this person. So that's step number 1. If you hold 1, 2, 3, 4 of them, as an example, and on average, each of them is helping you get about 30, 25, 30 leads, 25, 30 leads, that would translate to about 100 new leads that have come to you. And the bit about this is you don't even need to advertise. You can literally just go post on your social media, say, you know what, we have a new webinar coming up talking about this, that, that. And every time someone comes and clicks that thing, whether they have attended the webinar or not, they have given you their name, their email, their phone number, meaning whether they attend the webinar or not, you can still comfortably reach out to them and say, you know what, thank you for reaching out, for coming for the webinar, or what happened. But no, in a nutshell, this is what we do. If there are any opportunities, use it as a conduit. So that is the first channel. Now, the second channel is you could use content. We produce videos like these and short form content, and every single day we make sure we post a lot of content out there to these social media channels. And just to give you context for our given case specifically, on Every other week, we're going to get about 20, 30 people that are coming in directly on grounds of this content that we are publishing. So if you check out my own personal channels or any of other personal channels we're working with, whether it's TikTok, whether it's YouTube Shorts, every other week we are getting continuous traffic coming in. Of, you know what? I watched this video talking about this and this and this. Please help me enlighten. Help me understand why I need a CRM software. And the more of those we get, the more we can know that, you know what? This month, so far, we've got 30, 30, 30 each week from TikTok. Those are 120, but as part of 1,200, this is what it has contributed to the full total. That is the second channel. The third channel is you could actually run ads. I know people are a bit hesitant towards running ads. They look at the expenditure, they don't look at the impact of what the ads have done. As an example, you can run ads, and those ads comfortably bring you 300, 400, 500 people. Your target is you do not need all the 500 in order for that business to make sense. All you need is about 20%. But say you've got 100 leads, and of those 100, 20 have taken a positive action towards what you want them to do. The amount of revenue you're going to make out of just those 20 is going to be a whole lot more than how much you have spent within the advert. So get comfortable, because the alternative is you literally walking out on the streets, which is not as effective. I mean, I can pay Facebook and Facebook generates me 100 leads in a day. Whereas on the contrary, if I decided to walk out to look for 100 people that same day, even if I had a team of 5, it would be an impossible task for them to do. So yes, sustainably, those are the 3 inbound channels that tend to work best. SEO is there, but I would categorize that under content. And like I said, if you'd like to know more about these things, you could comfortably reach out to us, and we will be in position to help and structure something that works best for you. So yes, don't forget to always reference back to the math, so that we're doing this, this, and this. But if we do these 3 activities, what do we need to do under each and every one of them? I'm doing webinars. What do we need to do? What are we going to talk about? We're doing content. What are we going to talk about? How are we going to do it, and how are we going to do it so that it doesn't strain our team out? We're going to run ads. Do we have the resources for that? How are we going to optimize them so that we get the value at the end of the day? So yes, like I said, inbound focuses on what are we going to do to bring the people to us. Why I like inbound more is because at the beginning it's much harder, but the more you grow, the easier people find you and the more people come to you. So it's a recurring cycle that keeps expanding more and more and more and more. So the second category is what they call outbound. When it comes to outbound simply means you're getting your team of maybe 1, 2, 3 people, and these 3 people are going out to hunt for business. So the number one mistake that most companies do, they tend to hire people, and they said, you know what, since you're a sales guy and you know sales, right? So start, begin. So you haven't guided this person on, number one, how are you going to prospect? Where are you going to get the people you're going to talk to? Where are you going to What are you going to say when you begin talking to these people? How are you going to structure your pitch? And in so doing, you're setting up your team for failure, because what they're going to reference on is their network. In most scenarios, their network doesn't comprise of more than even 100 people. Meaning, even if you chose to do all this and told them go out, the most they can do is get 30, 40 people at most. That means as a company, you need to come up with a structure of how do you go through this process. Yes, we're going out. How do we set up a guide so that these guys don't get exhausted and exhaust their networks as well? So step number 1 is understand how do you prospect. Um, Literally come up of maybe we go to LinkedIn, and here's how we use LinkedIn as a tool. Um, from there, we can use other phone directories like so and so, like maybe yellow.ug, or in some scenarios, we're going to use our referrals, but here's how we are going to use that sustainably, so that as a business, you're driving continuity. There's a place these people can go to every day and get the people that they need without exhausting the volume that they of contacts that they have. So as a company, come up with that standard of here is how we do it. Probably use Sales Navigator, or we use LinkedIn, or we use the Monkey Pesa prospecting tool to we log in there and it gives us a list of all the contacts of people who are looking for in a certain industry, their phone numbers, their emails, standardize it for them. That way, even 3 months down the road, they still have people they can talk to and they can initiate conversations with. What you need to understand about this, however, is because it's a cold call, the sale will require a lot of back and forth because the first segment of the call is just to help identify the problems. So yes, after you fix the prospecting, step number two, make sure you always fix how are they going to talk to people, how are they going to introduce themselves, because it's not an easy thing. Even if you called me and told me now begin making a conversation, so many people would struggle with it. So get them comfortable. Talk to people like us so that we help train your team on what they need to do when they're making these phone calls so that it gets more comfortable for them. Otherwise, if they make the first 6 phone calls and it's all negative, it really takes a toll on them and makes them fail to achieve whatever other goals they would have wanted to achieve in the future. So yes, I did a more in-depth video on this specifically, but for this given segment, I would have to end it at that point. If you'd like to know more, either reach out to us. We will literally structure your entire sales cycle so that people know what they need to do within the inbound side and what they need to do within the outbound side, whether it be it the phone calls, be it the follow-up process, and all those things. We can comfortably help you with all those. So yes, that's it for now. Let's get into the next segment. So step number 4 is what they call follow-up. Now, this is the stage where most sales are either made or lost. Let's keep in mind that this entire training is intended for people in the B2B world. When you're selling to other businesses, it takes time for sales to be converted. I mean, you're going to talk to probably the sales manager today or whoever is your contact person. That contact manager is going to need to talk to the CEO to introduce your idea. That from there, they are going to need to confirm with finance if those funds are available. Keep in mind that they also have their day-to-day operations to run. So the normal average B2B sales cycle, especially if you're selling to other mid-sized and large corporations, is going to take you a while. It's going to take you on average about 6, 8, 9 weeks to close a given sale. So where most people end up struggling and failing is because they anticipate that this is going to take much shorter. So they will kind of just follow up once and twice, and from that point on, they forget that it's supposed to take much longer. So the role of the follow-up phase is to make sure you're structuring your follow-up phase well. I mean, keep in mind that you're following up probably 1,000 people in a month. So what are you going to do? If you don't have a central system, which system is going to use to help you remind you when you need to follow up with contact number 13 that you called last week? You will set yourself up for failure. So now what you need to do as a standard, do these 2 things. Number one, institute a system. Have a central system that will keep sending you SMS reminders and emails. You could use a Monkey Pesa CRM because if you're in the African region, it will keep sending you texts and calls and keep reminding you that, you know what, this is what you need to accomplish. There's someone you called last month, but now is the time to follow up with them. So have that system set up. Institute a CRM software, precisely the Monkey Pesa CRM software, and it will help you in that. Then the second thing you need to do as part of your follow-up, institute a guide, a standard guide on what should our follow-up process be like. If we have 8 weeks, what should we say in week 1? What should we say in week 2? What should we say in week 3? Make sure it's also not boring. You're always checking the guy on business. People will even stop picking your phone calls. So figure out when am I going to check on them? What resources am I sending them? How am I keeping them preoccupied? That way, the, you're staying on top of mind while not boring the person. No? That's if they didn't give you a specific call to action. So yes, those are the 2 things that you need to do under follow-up. Institute a CRM software because managing even just 100 people is going to be one hell of a task without a central system to keep track of who needs to check on what and what do they need to do, which meeting did you have, what didn't you have. It's not going to be possible without a CRM software. And yes, and number 2, don't forget, set up the structure. And if you need help setting up those structures, please feel free to reach out to us at any point in time. That's it for this section. On to the next. So step number 5 is analyze your data. The thing about sales reps is every time you talk to them, they are going to give you the impression that they are doing a lot of work. I've seen very many case scenarios out of over the 400 plus trainings I've done in sales. You talk, whenever you ask this guy, give me an update of what's going on, they tend to have a lot of information. They give you, you know, this is moving. But the moment you begin looking into that data, it tends to give you a more realistic story of what is actually going in, what is going on within your sales cycle. There are going to be scenarios where you talk to a smaller person who is seemingly quiet in that corner, and the data based on the number of meetings, the calls held, the emails that are being sent, the follow-up process is going to show you that sometimes that smaller person might actually have much better work than this person. As a default, most people choose to use monthly reports to follow up. Yes, they are not bad, but they don't give you enough time to transition and adjust when things are going wrong midway. That's why you need a system like the Monkey Pesa Analytics CRM dashboard, which will, as things are happening, it's automatically generating for you reports, giving you trends, giving you alerts of, you know what, you need to check on this person, something is going wrong, your target is so and so, but based on the rate at which you're moving, you're not going to be able to achieve this. But yes, and as a default, look at it as your report book, something just to show you, help you keep track of what's going on. Ultimately, the sales department is what brings money to your organization. So I, for some reason, don't focus on tracking the money and fail to forget to effectively track the thing that is bringing the money. It's actually in in a lot more interest for you to track this thing and refine it better than it is for you to track the funds that have come in, because those ones are already in at the end of the day. I'm not saying don't do so, but just look at it that way. It's equally as important to track the effectiveness of what's going on. How many calls are you having? What are our emails performing like? What communications are working from customers? How is each of my sales reps performing in terms of calls, meetings, and all these other metrics that make the most sense to you? So just like before, the Monkey Pesa CRM is quite handy when it comes to this. It will keep you, to literally give you everything that you need to know about your analytics to do with what's happening within your sales and marketing department. And just by instituting that, you're going to notice that because now people are being held accountable, they are, they are going to try and perform better to hit the results that you want. Whereas if you're waiting for the report, they're going to try and customize it based on what you want as opposed to what is realistically happening on ground. And yes, that's step number 5. Step number 6, which is the final step of my 6-step process, is make sure you refine the process. Within the first month, whenever you make an adjustment and you're now figuring out how are we going to create sustainability, there are going to be things that work and things that don't work. You might test out webinars and in your scenario they don't work for you, whereas for another company they worked. You might test out content and there are certain content types that are working and those that are not working. So it's important that you come back and first of all visualize and understand, okay, this is what we've done, this is what we've done, this is what we've done. Of what we have done, this has worked, this hasn't worked, this has worked, this hasn't worked. Now, can we double down on what has worked? You just keeping on doing for the sake of, because it's interesting to you, just subjects you to failure sometimes. So as you're analyzing, you're not analyzing just for the sake of analyzing. You're analyzing to refine and make it better. Even if it takes you a quarter of constant refining, by the end of that entire quarter, you will entirely have such a competitive edge and an understanding that whatever you'll be doing at that point is what is best for your organization as a whole. So yes, and most importantly, you need to understand that analysis changes based on who you're selling to. What is required of you to sell to the construction industry may be different from what is required to sell to the schools. So as you even transition who you're selling to, if you're selling to startups and mid-sized companies, their requirements tend to differ. So get to understand and adjust that based on the phase of business in which you're in. And by doing that, you're going to set yourself up for success. In a nutshell, those are my 6 steps that we usually follow within the organization just to make sure that we can continuously drive consistent results. And most importantly, if you need help coming up with your structures, if you need help setting up some of these analytics and what is required of you, feel free to reach out to us at any point in time. We will undoubtedly be in position to help you to make sure that you too can drive continuous hundreds of sales each and every month. And that's all from us today, folks. Bye bye.